Years ago, John Ortberg was telling the story of calling up his spiritual mentor, Dallas Willard. Now, at the time, John Ortberg was a pastor at a large church kind of in the Chicago area, and he was feeling anxious, overwhelmed, a bit burnt out, and so he calls his mentor up, and he says, "Hey, Dallas, what do I need to do? Help me out here. I need some advice. Give me some wisdom. What do I need to do to become the person that I want to become? Something's not right. Things aren't going well. I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed. What do I need to do to become the person that I want to become?" He says that Willard pauses for a while, and then he says, "You just need to unhurry your life. You need to get rid of all the busyness, all the doing, all the busy and hurry. You just need to unhurry your life." And Ortberg says, "Yeah, that's great." So he's writing it down. He says, word for word, writing this stuff down. He says, "Okay, yeah, but that's good. What else, though? There's got to be more, yeah? Tell me what else." And he says that Willard pauses again, this time a little less. He pauses, and he says, "John, there's nothing else." He goes on to say this. He says, "Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life." Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Now, this conversation happened back in the 1990s, late 1990s. And here we are 30 years later. I think Willard is ahead of his time because here we are 30 years later. And I don't know about you, I think a lot of us, we still feel hurried, don't we? A lot of us, we feel distracted. I think some, maybe many, if we're honest, we're kind of exhausted. We're exhausted from being overscheduled. We're exhausted from being glued to our screens. We're exhausted from kind of chasing with an unending pace productivity. We're exhausted by measuring our worth based on all the things that we can or can't accomplish. And so we talk fast. We live fast. I think we even pray fast if we find time to pray at all, yeah? We fill our calendars. We've got calendars and schedules and days and weeks and months, and sure enough, a year, we're packing it all in. Good things, right? Family and friends and social life and kids and work and serving and all the hobbies and trips and things that we do. Good things. But I wonder, how often do we end the day scrolling our feeds, feeling unsatisfied and restless? Why can't we stop? Why can't we slow down? Why is slowing down? Why is stopping? Why is it so hard? What are we afraid might happen if we do? I say we because if I'm honest with you, this is one of those sermons that if nobody else hears it, it's good for me. It's something I need to hear because this is the season that I feel like I'm in right now, this season of life where candidly work and family and friends, all these wonderful things that God has given me, brought into my life, using in my life, they're wonderful things, but you know what else? They're also a lot. And many days I come home and I'm anxious and I'm overwhelmed and I have insecurities and doubts and yeah, I'm just overwhelmed by it all. And I was sharing this with some friends recently, and one of the friends that I was sharing this with, he said, "Hey, I hear you. I see you. I'm with you. That's encouraging." He said, "But here's the thing. I want to encourage you that like 5 years from now, you're going to look back on this time in life and just know that you're going to look back and you're going to kind of smile on this time in life. You're going to look back and you're going to realize that, man, you've got way more capacity than you did 5 years from now than you do right now. You can get way more done than you can. You're going to look back and you're going to smile." And honestly, there might be some truth to that. I think that, I look back in my life, things that overwhelm me, and I can see how now I can do more. But here's the other thing. As I've been thinking about that, the other thing is I don't want to wake up 5 years from now and realize that I've missed being present. I don't want to wake up 5 years from now and realize that I've missed being present with my friends, with my kids, with my wife. I don't want to wake up 5 years from now and realize that I've missed being present with God because for the last half decade, I've just been too busy. I came across a Rich Velotis quote recently. He's a pastor up in New York City and kind of connected with me. He said, our souls were not created for the kind of speed to which we've grown accustomed. We are a people out of rhythm with too much to do and not enough time to do it. And I say I connected with it, really. I felt convicted by it because I think this is true for me. Like I have this sense that I'm not created to move at the speed at which I'm growing or moving, right? I feel like I'm out of rhythm. I have too much to do, not enough time to do it. And I think it's really interesting because this topic of busy and hurriness, when you think about it, like it's this thing in our culture that we love to celebrate. Like, hey, how are you? I'm busy. Great, me too. Awesome, fist bump, right? We celebrate it, but I wonder how often do we stop to consider what all the hurry? How often do we stop to think about what all the busyness, what it's actually doing to us? I don't, not nearly enough. British pastor, philosopher H.H. Farmer, he said this. He said, if you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. If you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. And as I've been thinking about that, I realize I think this is what hurry does to us. It splinters our lives. It tears at our relationships. It drains our joy. It scatters our attention. It erodes our peace. It distracts us. And this distraction, because of all the busyness and all the hurry, it's not a new problem, right? It's an old problem. Familiar story back in the Gospel of Luke. This is Jesus and the disciples, while they were traveling, Jesus enters a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? So tell her to give me a hand. Now, we've heard that story, we read that story, right? And we get it, right? Like, we get it. People are over. Hospitality takes work. It's not a simple thing. We can hear her frustration. Can't someone just give me a hand, Jesus? This stuff is hard. And of course, it's easy to empathize with her, right? Like, we've probably been there. She's doing good things. But I want you to catch how Jesus responds to her. This is what he says. He says, the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and you're upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her. See, it's not that Martha's work was bad. I think what Jesus is trying to get her to see is that it's just misplaced, right? She's busy, she's hurried, she's so busy doing all these good things for Jesus that she misses being able to be with him. She's so busy doing good stuff for Jesus, for others, that she misses the ability to sit and slow down and be with Jesus. And I wonder if that's true for us too. I wonder if that's true for you. Maybe you're so busy serving. Maybe you're so busy hosting. Maybe you're so busy planning. Maybe you're so busy doing or producing or achieving or whatever it is that and me too, like we've lost the capacity to just slow down. We've lost the capacity to just sit, just to slow, just to stop, just to be with Jesus. Someone once said, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. If the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Now, that's not a Bible verse, but there's wisdom in it, yeah? There's wisdom in it because both sin and busyness, they can have the same effect in our lives. They cut us off from who? They cut us off from God. They cut us off from each other. They even cut us off from ourselves, right? Our own awareness of ourselves and how we're doing. And so if all this is true, then what do we do? How do we live differently in a culture that runs off restlessness? How do we live differently? Well, the answer starts, I don't think it starts with a new calendar. I don't think it starts with a new plan, a new schedule. No, it starts with an old story. And that story starts in the very beginning of the Bible when God creates the world and everything in it. We pick up in chapter 1, verse 31. It says that God saw all that he had made, and it was very good indeed. Evening came, and then morning, the sixth day. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work he had done. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, for on it he rested from all his work of creation. So God creates, and then he rests. Did you catch that? I mean, think about that. God rests. I think sometimes when we talk about rest in our culture, when we talk about rest, as a recipe, to fight against busyness and hurry, we're tempted to, okay, rest, but like, I'm type A, right? You don't know what it's like to be type A. How can I rest? God rested. Yeah, but you don't know what it's like to run a business. God rested. Yeah, but I have young kids at home. I know, God rested. There's so much to do, Kyle. God rested. And here's the thing, it's not like God rests, he's not burnt out and needs a break. His rest, it's not this break from exhaustion, it's not this, he wants to be lazy. No, his rest, notice, it's an act of enjoyment. You think about that like that? Rest is an act of enjoyment. It's an act of delight. He looks at all that he's created and he says, this is good. It's very good. He delights. He rests. And so what I want us to see is that from the very beginning of God's story, from the very beginning of the Bible, God builds rest into the rhythm of creation. He builds rest into the rhythm of into his good creation, his very good creation. God builds rest into that rhythm. It's work, then stop. It's create, then cease. It's forward, and then slow down. And when we live with that rhythm, we flourish. But when we don't, we get splinters. Because rest isn't resistance to God's plan, it's his good design, it's cooperation with it. It's interesting, that word rested, it just comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which literally means to stop. That's it, just stop. Stop working, stop buying, stop providing, stop producing, stop scrolling, stop performing, stop achieving, just stop. Slow down. And it's not just a good idea. There's not just wisdom in that. It's not just something that God has built into the rhythm of his creation. In the Old Testament, it's actually a command. He says this, Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember the Sabbath day. Remember to stop. Keep it holy. Because when we stop, when we rest, when we Sabbath, we remember who we are. And we remember who we aren't. We aren't God. We aren't limitless. No, we're finite creatures under the loving care of an infinite creator who delights in us. That's who we are. But then why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to slow down? Why is it so hard to stop? I think there are a lot of things that we could keep saying about that. But as I've been thinking about it, I think one of the reasons is that because it requires trust. Slowing down, stopping, taking a Sabbath. It's like a trust of our faith. Like, do we actually believe that God is going to care for us? Do we actually believe that God is going to provide for us if we slow down? I think it's the same question that Israel was asking when they were wandering around in the desert. After they're freed from slavery in Egypt, they're wandering around in the desert and they're hungry, and so they go to Moses, and Moses goes to God, and this is what God says to them. He says, okay, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you. The people are going to go out each day and gather enough for that day. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gathered on other days. So they're hungry. They're wandering around in this wilderness. They've been freed from slavery, and they're wandering around in the desert, and they're hungry. And so what God does is he says, okay, I'm going to provide. I'm going to rain bread from heaven. I'm going to give you manna. Each day, you're going to be able to go out and get all that you need, except on the sixth day. On the sixth day, something different happens. On the sixth day, they get twice as much. Every other day, they get as much as they need for that day, but on the sixth day, they get twice as much. Why? Well, so they could rest on the seventh, the story goes. They get twice as much on the sixth day so that they could stop, so that they could slow down, so that they could rest on the seventh. It was God's way of saying, you can stop. You can trust that I'm going to provide for you. You can trust that I see you, that I care about you, that I love you. That's hard to believe sometimes, yeah? It's hard for me to believe. It's hard to believe because we're prone, I think, to that old lie that if I slow down, if I stop, everything around is gonna fall apart. All the things that I have going, if I stop, it's all gonna fall apart. But what God is saying to us this morning is, no. You've got it all wrong. You've got it backward. It's literally that. It's not that if you stop, everything falls apart. It's that if you don't stop, you're going to fall apart. We need rest. Even Jesus lived with that kind of rhythm, yeah? Like you read the Gospels and you see that Jesus, he often withdraws. He often, pulls back. He slows down to silence and solitude so that he can pray. He walks slowly. He let interruptions become ministry opportunities, right? He refused to be rushed, even when the crowds pressed in and people demanded things and the needs stacked up. Jesus didn't mistake hurry for being faithful. I like how John Mark Comer says it. He says, hurry and love are incompatible. Love always takes time. Hurry and love think about that. Hurry and love are incompatible. Love always takes time. Some of our worst, maybe a lot of our worst moments, don't they happen when we're in a hurry? Like some of our worst moments, the things that, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or I kind of regret that. Like some of our worst moments, they happen when we're in a hurry, right? We snap at our kids because we got to get to the next thing, or we cut someone off because we're already running behind. We're rude at the checkout because it's taken longer than we thought that it would. We rush through a conversation because we got to get to the next thing. We pray distracted prayers. It's really hard to be loving and hurried at the same time. Maybe it's impossible. I think that's why Jesus is inviting us into something better. He's inviting us into a better way. Matthew 11, Jesus says, this is Jesus' words. Jesus is saying, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. See, Jesus says, come to me and you will find rest for your souls. That's what we're looking for. Whether we have the words to say that or the language or whether we know it or not, that's what we're looking for. And that's what Jesus is offering us. It's more than a nap. It's deeper than a day off. Jesus is offering peace. Jesus is offering restoration. Jesus is offering shalom. It's the kind of rest that settles the deepest parts of who we are. And notice it only comes, that kind of rest, that kind of deep settling rest, it only comes from Jesus. Jesus doesn't say, go to Netflix. He doesn't say, go to the game. Jesus doesn't say, he says, no, come to me. And see, it's not about earning something from God. It's not about earning God's favor. No, it's about experiencing his presence. Resting, it's not an escape from rhythms. It's what gives rhythms life. And so what would this look like for you? What would it look like for you to stop? Maybe this week. What would it look like for you to slow down? What would it look like for you to shape your rhythms around rest? I know there's so many reasons why we can't do it, but what would it look like if you did? Maybe it starts just by noticing the splinters in your life. Are there ways that you're living against the grain of God's good design? Where at? How so? What's it doing to you? Maybe you're working nonstop because you're afraid. You're afraid to slow down. Maybe you can't stop because you think that I'm the only person that can handle this thing. I can't stop because if I stop, how's this stuff going to get done? Maybe you won't say no because you don't actually believe that God is going to provide. You don't actually believe that God is going to care for you. You don't actually believe that God is going to be with you. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's just that it feels unproductive. Or maybe you even feel kind of like, are you just like saying it's okay to be lazy? No, that's not what I'm saying. Maybe it feels a little selfish, but here's the thing, rest isn't selfish, at least not as God intends it. It's sacred. It's sacred. Remember back in Genesis 2:3, what does God say about that day of rest? He calls it holy. It's interesting. It's the first thing in the Bible that God calls holy. It's the first thing that God calls holy. It's this rest in him. See, when we rest as God intended us to rest, we create space for God to restore us, for God to refresh us, for God to replenish us. It reminds me of Psalm 23. You know the verses. The Lord is my shepherd, King David says. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. I didn't catch this until recently. Notice that God doesn't ask us to lie down. He makes us lie down. He makes us slow down. He makes us pause. Why? Because he knows we need it. He knows that we need it. See, rest is not about squeezing something into an already busy week. It's not about squeezing something into an already overscheduled calendar, right? It's about unbusying ourselves so that we can live our lives around what matters most, so that we can stop, so that we can be still, so that we can let God restore us, so that we can let God change us, we can let God transform us. And here's the thing. It's not just about us as individuals. This is not just a me thing, it's not just a you thing, it's an us thing, right? The people of God, the rest for the people of God, the church. And so a question is, what would this look like for us as a church? What would it look like for the Crossing if we were known for healthy rhythms of rest as God designed? I want you to imagine for a second, I want you to imagine if we as a church became known in this city. If we became known not just for what we achieve, not just for what we accomplish, not just for what we do, but for how deeply we rest in what Jesus has already done. I want you to imagine for a second just being so at peace with God that your friends and your neighbors and your coworkers and your classmates, and they just notice that there's something different about you. What would change? See, in a world defined by anxiety, I want you to imagine just living with calm. In a culture that's obsessed with accumulation, I just want you to imagine just being content. I'm content. In a generation that's addicted to speed, imagine being fully present. Still showing up, still working hard, still serving, but fueled by rest. See, I'm convinced that the world doesn't need a busier church. The world doesn't need a busier Kyle or you. The world doesn't need busier people. What the world needs is the people of God sometimes willing to set aside good things so that we can simply sit at the feet of Jesus and rest and be restored. Of course, information doesn't produce transformation, yeah? Like, if this is who we want to be, then we've got to practice. We've got to practice. And so this week in our Experience God Devos, I hope you grabbed one when you came in. If not, please grab one on the way out. This is what we're gonna do. Our goal is pretty simple. We're just gonna take steps toward a healthier, toward a better rhythm. We're gonna intentionally set aside some time, not to binge Netflix, not to rot, not to be lazy, no, but to stop, to rest, to delight, to worship. See, that's the kind of rest that you need, and it's the kind of rest that Jesus is offering. You weren't meant, I wasn't meant, we're not meant to live splintered lives. We're meant to live whole. We're meant to live whole. So 30 years ago, Dallas Willard says that hurry, it's the great enemy of spiritual life. And you know what Jesus is saying today? Yes, it's still true. So come to me, all you who are weary. Come to me, all you who are burdened, and find rest for your souls. Let's pray. Oh God, I pray, not just for me, but for us, for our church, that this would be true. that we would somehow be able to buck the trend of hurriedness and busyness and exhaustion from doing and doing and doing. That we could sometimes set aside good things. These are good things. Set aside good things. Why? So that we could just be with you, be restored, be refreshed, be changed and transformed by you, God. That's what we need. Not to do more, but to be with you. And I pray that that would be true, increasingly so of us as a church, and that as it's true, that you would send us out so that we could be the people you've called us to be the kind of people who love as you've called us to love. Jesus, may it be so. We pray in your name. Amen.